Okay, everybody. So this is absolutely not a tracker update. Okay, so some of you will probably see that we've gone live, and not about the tracker. We'll do the tracker in a couple of hours after the 1400. Sorry, yeah. No, hang on a second. Now I get confused. So it's 4 o'clock. So it's 1400 timeline. So 1200 UTC. Then the next one, 1600 UTC, which is 4 o'clock, which is 6 o'clock my time. So we're going to come up with the tracker at that time. So there'll probably be no one here, but it doesn't matter because I'm just answering the questions. People will come and check this out at some other time. Now, just the first thing I've got to understand, this is a Facebook question list, so you have to put the questions in the comments under the Facebook post. The next one we'll do will actually be a YouTube one, and in fact it'll go on both but the questions will only be able to be read off of YouTube. So what that means is I'll do a little probably 1.5 minute video excuse me, here on this system, which will come up on YouTube, and say if you want to ask a question, if you're a YouTube fan rather than a Facebook fan, you put your questions in underneath the comments of that little 1.5 minute YouTube clip. It'll probably go up on Facebook at the same time, but we won't recognise questions from Facebook comments of the YouTube question post. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, but that'll probably be, there's not a lot of questions here anyway, except from Rachel, but that's another story. So we're probably, in the GGR and the OGR, we used to do it once a week, and there was a lot going on. But at the moment, it's pretty straightforward. It's 15 little boats, hopefully 15 now, underway across the Pacific in the trade winds, so every day is pretty much more of the same. But in the Southern Ocean, jeepers, when you get down there, you don't know what's happening from one day to the next. So quite a following. We'd get quite a lot of stuff happening. So anyway, straight into the questions. I've got them here on my phone. We did restrict the questions to a maximum of 4 questions per person, right? And Rachel, when you get to see this, you put like about 38 questions or something. So I deleted all of the previous one, kept the first 4 questions. So I'll answer them. And thanks for your enthusiasm and passion, but we've got to try and keep it on the program. So I'll answer them as best I can. I haven't actually had a good look in depth. I've just been looking at the numbers here. I prefer to come up pretty much cold on the questions, and then I can give you my genuine, honest opinion on answers and bits and pieces. I don't have material here to support anything I'm about to say. I just give you the way I see it. So first one's from Rachel. How long do the different parts on the boats generally last if maintained or if they are not maintained? Well, first of all, the 580 is pretty much designed and specified to go around the world. And there's some degree of flexibility on deck gear and so on that each of the entrants can do. And the thickness of the lines and the brand and type of blocks they're using and things like that. Same too with wind vanes, you know. The sails are all identical. They're all quantum sails. The rigs, as it turns out, most people have gone with Selden rigs. There's a couple. There's only one Sparcraft rig now in the fleet. That's Trekker. So you know, generally they're specified, you know, with a reasonable amount of tolerance. So because they've got to go around the world, even if the boats are only being built to sail around the bay, they're using similar stuff. One of the things that changes is when the boats are now doing it, they're carrying a lot more weight, so that can put stress on it, and they're going to be at sea a long time. But normally, I would say everything except for the standing rigging on the boat should be capable, if it's well maintained, to last the distance. I can't give you a specific answer on certain items, but everything needs to be maintained. Certainly all the wind vane systems on the boat, they need to be maintained. You need to do spanner checks. You know, some are built stronger and cost a lot more money than others. But either way, they're all designed to cross oceans, and there are legs on this mini globe race. So when they get into port, they can then work on those systems and fix them up, replace them, do whatever, and keep going. But generally speaking, the boats suspect pretty well. And I wouldn't expect to see any major things unless it's ocean damage. Like Kerry lost his windvane systems completely wiped out, but they were really very vulnerable anyway. Massive big panels which wouldn't pass the rule now anyway. They were grandfathered from the 2021 Transat. When Pete built the boat, he turned up with 200-watt panels mounted on the back and said, "Oh, we're going to change that." So now it's a 50-watt mobile one. In case you lose them all, you've at least got one down below. So generally speaking, yeah, everything's got to be fixed. The boat should, all the 580s should get around the world. They can be topped up and maintained really well in the stopover ports, to check all the systems and stuff. So it's hard to be specific on any one particular item. I hope that answers the question. John, can you post some night pictures, please? I realise this may be a problem due to boat movement, but how dark actually is it on the cloudy or starry night? Well, first of all, it's the entrance of the ones taking the pictures, so they'll post them, and there has been some night pictures already, just showing the moon and bits that go on. There's been a couple of entrants that have actually put up videos of thunderstorms at night, showing all the lightning and bits and pieces. If you go back on Jasmine's stuff, she's got some there, and also Kerry put some up as well. It gets absolutely dark, but then it gets light really quickly when it's absolute dark, especially if there's a full moon. You can literally, when you're on the ocean, and there's no clouds, the air is usually pretty clear, and on a full moon night, you can read a book under the light of the moon, okay? And there's a lot of lights on the ocean with the moon. I call it the silver grey highway. Most people have got different versions of that. When the moon comes down, you've got this amazing line, it's a road like of the glow of the moon coming over the ocean and so on. So that's a lot of light. The stars themselves glow. If it's flat calm, in a glassy calm, you get a perfect reflection. In the sea, there's some amazing stuff goes on, and if you get it right, it's got bioluminescence or phosphorence in the water. Every movement on the water just glows. If you see a dolphin come past, it looks like a torpedo or something. And all the water coming off the back of the boat, the rudder and the transom and so on, it just lights up. So it's really a bit challenging for me to sort of try and post some dark pictures, but the starry night is fantastic. And your comment there, back in England, there's really no such thing as a dark because of light pollution. So you want to, as a kid, I tried to determine what was going on in the world. I used to be in the country a bit, camping and bits and pieces. You just get out in the country, just try and get away from all the lights on a clear night, and just climb the local farmer's fence and go sit in the paddock or on the side of the hill and just look up at space. It's unbelievable. When I was a kid, you used to get very excited when you saw a satellite coming past, and you would see them. You could, you'd usually see at least one satellite every hour or so. Now you get down there, it's like a light show. All of the satellites that are up there, it's impossible not to see them. So you just want to, John, get out there and find some total dark, and just look up in the sky. It's pretty specky. Judy, what kind of penalty will Dan get? Will only affect this portion of the race, or all portions of the race? Well, first of all, the race is around the world. So every leg of the race is added up, and the person with the shortest amount of time at sea is the one who will win the race. Okay, so there are little leg prizes, but that's no big deal. The objective is to get all the way around the world, complete the circumnavigation, and do it solo and unassisted while you're at sea. So a penalty received on any one given leg is just accrued to the other end, at the very finish. We have to wait. We only accept the report from an entrant on anything that needs to be assessed at the end of that voyage. We don't ask them to put everything down while they're at sea. They should have written notes, and when the boat's affected, which is Argo and Little Wren, sorry, not Little Wren, it's Little B, Argo and Little B. Argo pulled Little B off the rocks effectively. They'll give me a written report, and based on that, I'll sit down. I've got two other associates. The three of us will sit down and assess the information and we'll make decisions based on all of that. But it's quite a serious infringement when you receive outside assistance. In some events, if that happens, you're just simply disqualified. You're out of the game completely. But in this instance, whatever penalty is assessed will affect the finishing time. So if he finishes in 250 days and he's got a 2-week penalty or a 2-day penalty, that gets added on to his time at sea. So effectively, and in fact, I think I have to check the notice of race on this one, because in the other events, you've actually got to spend that time in a penalty box to actually accrue the final position. So in the GGR, if you get a time penalty in the North Atlantic, there is a latitude. Okay, and basically what happens is we watch that, and if they're given a 3-day time penalty, once they get to that latitude, they have to turn around and go backwards, right, and stay below that penalty latitude, or we actually give them a time. We just say at that time, the next ping on the position, you will go south of that latitude, and you're not to cross it for the next 3 days if you had a time penalty of 3 days. And when you cross it 3 days later, you have to be within 60 miles of where you crossed it, because we don't want someone to go down and then you look at the weather and go west for 3 days or something, and then pop up and be in a strategically better position. So wherever they go down, they've got to come back up through that, and then when they're heading north again to the finish, people can see what their real time is, because there's no handicapping or anything like that in the GGR, and it makes it easy for people to understand. And they really scratch their head and say, "What's he going back for?" "Oh, he's got a time penalty." "Oh, I see. So he's got to spend 3 days sailing around in circles." I say, "Yeah, that's right." But then it means the time they cross the finish line is all done. And to be quite honest, I don't know whether we did that in the mini globe race or not. We may not have, because there's so many stops and bits and pieces that maybe a consideration. So I've got 3 different notice of races in my head, so I'd have to check that. I hope that answers your question. It's all about finishing times overall when they get back to Antigua. How tall is the mast on a 580? I saw that Kerry attempted to climb his mast. Is it at all possible to actually do this on these boats, or do you need tools to reach the ropes, lights, etc. at the mast? Well, there's a few things there. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up to see how tall it is. But it's got a splice in it, so it doesn't fit in a. It's probably, I don't know. I'd have to check on that. It is available on the website. If you go to the Class Globe 580 website, the specifications are there. You go to the specifications section at the top. It drops down and it'll give you the mast height, and it's probably about 7, 8, 9, 10. Jeepers. Probably 12 metres or something. Maybe, no, it wouldn't be 12 metres. I'm guessing. You caught me out there. I should have looked at that and give you the exact answer. But anyway, climbing the mast is a separate subject. When Kerry went up the mast, he didn't have any climbing system. If you had a big mast to climb and it was really pumping around, there's different things you can get. Some of them like a bosun's chair, that's the first thing, and they'll have a one-way jammer and leg straps that you can put your feet in. And effectively, as you push this jammer up the rope, you're going to climb a rope. You're not climbing the mast. As you push it up, your legs come up, your knees are at your chest sort of thing, and then you just push down or stand up. And as you stand up, it pulls it back down to your chest. And then when you're there, you sit in the chair again, because it's hanging there, and then you slide your foot straps up, okay, and your legs come up, and then you stand up again. And as you go up, you've got another slider on your chest here. It slides up that rope, so you're actually climbing the rope. I saw Pat Lawless the other day. He's got a ladder. He's got a flexible ladder, like a rope ladder, and he can hoist that up the mast in the mainsail track. And so then he's effectively got a ladder there, and he can climb up the ladder. But he would still have a bosun's chair and something he can clip on in case he falls. Another one you can do is you can have steps on your mast. You just drop the steps down, and as you climb up, and then as you climb down, you fold them up again. They stay on the mast. So that's climbing the mast. In my BOC, I use something that I've never seen anyone else use, and it was fantastic. And it was really simple. I actually had webbing strops stitched into the luff of my mainsail. So when the main's up, I could actually climb up with those foot strops all the way up with the mainsail up, wherever it was. And I could use those handles to pull the sail down, because it was a 50-footer. And those same foot strops, I could put my hand in it and just pull the sail down if you're reefing downwind. It was very effective, but I've never seen anyone else do that. So then the issue of tools, that's different. If you, whatever job you want, if you need a screwdriver, you've got to take a screwdriver with you, or a pair of pliers or whatever. So there's different questions there. I hope that gives you an answer. And as I say, the specifications of the entire rig is on the 580 website, so that's where you can get the actual detail. And of course, what happens is, this might be the other part of what you want to know. If you're on the marina and the boat's not moving and the mast is vertical, you can pretty much climb up the mast because it's not wobbling, okay, and it's on the center line, so it'll stay there. But if you were at the top of the mast and you had your mate come on and just sort of rock the boat a bit so the mast started to heel over, when it gets over a bit, the weight of the person, the leverage at the top of the mast will be enough to just let the boat fall on its side, okay, and that's what Kerry was worried about. He was tied on with a long line, so if that happened, he would still be connected to the boat, the mast would right itself again, and he'd be on the rope, and he could get back to the boat and climb on board. So generally speaking, if you're going to sea and sailing, I would never go past the spreaders. Right? You can probably hold on the spreaders, and it's still a bit dicey, but it's okay. But if you try to go above the spreaders, the leverage is too much, and it'll just pull the boat down. It's not possible. There's not enough ballast in the keel to do that. To hold the mast down parallel at the end of the mast, you need about 45 kilos. So a 45 kilo weight at the end of the mast will hold the boat down and counterbalance the keel. So you can see on that, if it's any longer, it's going to be any heavier, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, so when a boat gets to the Marquesas ahead of schedule, do they simply have to stay for 8 days and then leave, or does everyone depart for Fiji at the same time? No. This is the pit stops. If they arrive at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, and it's a 7-day pit stop, like in Papeete, then you don't get to leave again until 2 o'clock in the morning, exactly 7 days later. So there's staggered arrival and staggered departures. Okay, that's how that happens. It's just pit stops. But when they get to Fiji, they all stop. That's when they catch up, and there is a mass restart of everyone leaving on the 26th of July. So there's a difference between a pit stop and a leg. And this is leg 2 from Panama to Fiji. The next leg goes Fiji to Cape Town, and there's various stops along the way. And and then we add the whole lot up at the end of the day. Okay, Robert Flanagan. Canada Dan is drifting toward rocks with an onshore current dragging him. He's going to be given substantial penalty for this, you've stated. Now, if he dropped his anchor and called for help, then he would not be penalised. That's exactly right. If he was paddling his boat to hold position, is this not the same as dropping anchor? No, it's completely different than dropping the anchor. When you drop the anchor and connect to the bottom, you're anchored. When you're paddling, you're still doing whatever you're doing, but it's not anchored. And that's defined. You can't take any outside assistance, word for word, in the notice of race unless you're actually in port, moored alongside, or at anchor. Okay, but he wasn't at anchor. Canada and the American Coast Guard safety rules state you must be able to hold position by anchoring or self-propulsion, and you must produce one of these methods any time by law enforcement officer upon inspection your vessel with the territorial waters. Yeah, that's fine. Any 580 can anchor at any time. They are required, and they do have at least one anchor with rope and chain. We recommend they have 2, so they could anchor anytime they want. Question: your substantial penalty when a captain is clearly following the rules for good seamanship, a time penalty may be, but substantial. Yeah, absolutely, completely substantial, because he wasn't anchored. And here's the deal: the MGR is a game. It's a race. It has a set of rules, and when you sign on to the game, you have to abide by the rules. And the rules are very simple. You basically have a situation where, in this instance, if he hadn't have got a toe off the rocks, I'll give you a hypothetical, touch wood, he could have ended up on the rocks, right? And if he ended up on the rocks, game over. He would not be continuing on to Marquesas. Basically, he'd be out of the game, and so that's the ramification. He's either out of the game, or he requires assistance, and he takes assistance at sea, and the advantage of that is kept him in the game. Now, if we gave him a 3-day time penalty, and then Dan carries on and sails really well, and all of a sudden starts to get in front of Renaud, and he beats Renaud by 2 days around the world, there will be plenty of people that would stand up and say, hang on a minute, your penalty way back then wasn't enough, and you've now left a guy that if he should be technically out of the race, and he's not. You see, so it's quite a serious, I won't call it offence, but a serious breach of the rules, all right? And so that's taken into consideration as well. I complimented both of the skippers on what they did and how they did it, not passing comment on the rule breach, just saying, well, that's sensible, that's good. But as you say, technically speaking, if Dan had have anchored and then taken off, there's some issues there as well, because he's then moved along the course, because usually if you anchor somewhere, you've got to be under your own steam to get out again, right? You can't all of a sudden just anchor and then get someone to tow you for 10 miles at 7 knots or something, because that's given you a competitive advantage along the way. So there's lots of ramifications. But I gave all of the guys and girls, before we started the mini globe race, after the Transat, and I said, look, this is all a lot of fun. We're all great mates. We're all part of the MGR family and all this sort of stuff. But guess what? You're playing a game. There's a set of rules, and I'm going to have to rule the roost. And sometimes I can be a bad guy, right? Because there's rules. And while some of the MGR sailors are not interested in racing and the rules, some are. They're very competitive. And Dan has shown that he wants to be competitive as well. So he'll understand. You've got to abide by the rules, and it's quite a lot in it. So anyway, yes, I hope that answers. You've got supporting documentation. Yeah, they can anchor anytime they want. They've got it all there. But a substantial penalty, we don't know what that is yet. We've got to look at all the issues. And it's not just, it was just a little help and it just pulled him off. It was all done in 20 minutes. It's what the meaning is. And the meaning is quite simple. Without that help, he may not now be in the MGR. Okay, so it's got to be something that has an effect on his competitive nature to let him back in the race effectively. Because if it was anywhere else, it's very clear in the notice of race. It's a solo voyage around the world without assistance, and so it's quite a important issue. Perry, curious as to approximate cost of shipping a 580 from Australia to Europe. Depends if you'd have to ask Dan on that, but probably around about 10 grand or 10 or 12 grand, something like that. If you're running 2 boats in a container, you'd have to ask John and Popeye on that one. I'm not sure. So yeah, it's I'd say that's my guess. I suppose 10, 12 grand for a 20-foot container, and probably 18 grand for probably maybe 15, 18 grand for a 40-foot container. That's my guess. I haven't moved anything for a long time, but that would be my guess. So it all adds up. Gary could tell you as well, but I'm not sure on that. John, when are you planning to head over to China and then Fiji? I leave here on the 7th of, or 6th of May or something, to China for a week, and then a week later we're down to Fiji, and then we put the boat in the water and we're running everything from there. And Rouge, rudders and wind vanes. In Panama, some sailors made changes. I would love a rundown on the current rudder wind vane configuration of all boats. What wind vane brand is the wind vane one that has its own rudder? Is the wind vane replacing the rudder? Okay, so first of all, there's 2 types of systems. There's one which is an auxiliary rudder wind vane system. That's like the hydrovane. Has a flip-flop vane that's used. I won't give you a lesson on how they work now, but that's used as sensing the off-course situation. The vane flips and flops, and it has its own rudder in the water, right? And that rudder is the same size as the 580 rudder, right? The original ship's rudder. And that rudder will turn based on the flip-flop and through a gearbox, effectively. The others is a servo pendulum system, and there's a rudder. So if that's the servo pendulum, the blue bit, in the water behind the boat, it'll have a vane on the top, a flip-flop vane as well, sensing the off-course situation. And by doing that, this rudder in the water turns, but instead of turning the boat, it actually paravanes to the surface one way or the other. And when it does that, there's ropes that are connected to the tiller, and it turns the boat. So that's the South Atlantic and the Wind Pilot. Okay, they're the two concepts of vanes and the 3 models that are here. Now I've got to remember the skippers here. I've got to remember them all. So Jacob, I know Jacob has got a Wind Pilot because he had a little problem with it the other day. He must have solved it pretty easily. It was a second-hand Wind Pilot that he had. Okay. That's a servo pendulum system. Adam, I'm just going to run down the names here. Adam has got a sailor mat. It's a older type of gear. It's sort of like it's actually a combination of this is a bit funny. It has a servo pendulum that actually turns the rudder. So it's a combination, but it's halfway between the two. So he's got a sailor mount. It's designed for a much bigger boat like the Hydrovane. Very powerful. He bought it second hand, and it's a solid system. I remember David David Scott Cowper did a solo around the world with that vane, the first one, in about 82, 81, because I was helping him to beat Chichester's record, which he did. But there's a good system, an older style system. They don't make them anymore. Peeler has got a Hydrovane. She had a South Atlantic but couldn't work out how to work it, basically. She set off and never used one before and never felt comfortable. So she bought a Hydrovane. She's got an offset installation, so the ship's rudder is there already. So there's sort of effectively two rudders on the back of the boat for Peeler. So when I say offset, you've got the 580 rudder in the middle and it's offset to the right, okay, right or left, and that's where the Hydrovane works. Sorry, I made a mistake here. I just realised Adam has got a South Atlantic wind vane, servo pendulum. It's the same I had on Tracker. They're really cool. You can keep them going. If you look after them, they do well. They're light. They're very efficient, incredibly cheap. Built really well, but the South Atlantic is good. I have got a problem with them. And if you're sensible, you'll keep it going all the way around the world. Peeler has got a Hydrovane, all right? That's right. The reason I realised I made a mistake with Adam because I got the Dan Turk. It's Dan Turk that's got the sailor mat. So Adam's got a South Atlantic. Kerry Harris, he also has a South Atlantic, and he's modified the servo blade in the water to make a more efficient kick-up system and made a few little tweaks on that. So he's modified it a bit to make it fly a little bit better. So it's another South Atlantic. Christian Sawyer has a Wind Pilot. It's a brand new Wind Pilot. He's got another second-hand spare on board as well for bits and pieces. So he managed to buy a brand new one secretly. This is the whole story. Jasmine's got a Hydrovane. She initially installed it on the center line, removing the ship's rudder. But in Panama, she put it offset and put the ship's rudder back on, I think. I think that's right. I've got to remember this. Because she did some work on the Hydrovane. Or am I thinking of Peeler? I think she's got the main rudder back on again. I think she moved it. Okay. Ayrton's got the Hydrovane set up right next to the 580 rudder, so we've got both of them. Ayrton. Both John and Popeye on 99 and 100, they've both got Hydrovanes mounted on the center line. Okay, so they took the ship's rudder off. Josh has got a South Atlantic, I think. I'm pretty sure it's a South Atlantic. And he's having no problems. Everything's tickety-boo, so that's fine. Holiday Dan, he's got a Hydrovane. Now, he initially arrived with the boat with the main rudder and offset, I think it was. Or was it? I don't know. No, he must have arrived and he took the rudder off and put the Hydrovane amidships. So it's got its own rudder, that was all. And he put the 580 rudder up in the forecastle. Then when he got to Panama, or was it Antigua, one of the two, he put the main rudder back on. I think it was Panama. Put the main rudder back on and moved the Hydrovane offset, okay, off to the side. So that's Holiday Dan. And the next one, Renaud, he's got a Hydrovane, always been offset. So he's running two rudders. He's got the 580 rudder plus the Hydrovane rudder off to the side. Gary has got a Hydrovane, and he took the main rudder off. So the Hydrovane is mounted on the center line, okay, and that's the only rudder. And Eric has got a South Atlantic, quite happy with it. And that's the servo pendulum system. So that's everyone, I think. So the thing there is that what's happening, and I think this is I'm not going to say it's a huge advantage, but it may be an advantage. When the Hydrovane is offset, they're then linking the Hydrovane rudder to the main rudder so that both rudders are always acting in unison. So you actually have two rudders on the back working all the time. Normally, when you're running a Hydrovane, you would lock the main rudder, the 580 rudder amidships, or as a trim tab off to one side, lock it, and then you'd use the Hydrovane, which is offset, to steer the boat. So that's a bit of a rundown. I hope that makes sense. Gus Van Egger, what is Alma actually doing? Alma is supporting the class. Okay, Alma Humans is supporting the Globe 580, but we give them a lot of extra exposure because we don't have other partners. So we have them up all over the place. They're quite cool. They decided to support. Interestingly, the story goes like this: they decided to support Jane and I for what we're doing, more so than get exposure from supporting the 580. They liked the fact that we were busting our butt to support something we believe in, and they're all human adventures, right? They're all our events: the Ocean Globe, the Gold Globe, and the Mini Globe race. They just like the concept of the events, being all about people, real adventures, things like that. So they came on board. They couldn't manage the events, but they're supporting the class for the next 5 years, and they give us some support, which helps us a little bit each year. So we try and promote them as much as possible. Um, and we're happy to have them on board, especially the way they came on board and the ethos of why they're there. It's quite, it was a warm, fuzzy feeling there. Anyway, Rachel, can you refresh us on the procedure for entering the next port? Well, you're arriving exactly the same as a cruising boat. Anyone cruising the world, you have your own passport as a crew member, and the boat has its own passport. It's called the ship's papers. It's a registered document. With your country, nationality, and your description of the boat and a registration number and so on. And then before you leave your previous port, you're supposed to advise the next port that you're coming. So you have an advance notification. And some countries want that 3 days before, some people want it 2 weeks before, and so on. And then there are only certain ports that you're allowed to enter as a port of entry. And so you go to those ports, and that's the only place that Customs Immigration will let you in. And then when you get there, you have customs, immigration, quarantine, and that's usually it. So quarantine will be a doctor or health official. Let's see if you've got a disease and check the boat. Customs will come in and check for drugs and check for whatever contraband, how much cigarettes you got on board, and alcohol, and they'll possibly put it in bond and stuff until you leave again. And immigration will be there to make sure that there's no illegal immigrants on your boat. Stamp your passport, do all the same things you do when you arrive at the airport. So, and then when you leave, you reverse the whole process. You usually have to pay a certain fee for your lighthouses around the country. It might be $10, $20 or something. Navigation fees, and you got to pay for all your procedures as well. You pay customs immigration; they might want a couple hundred. Quarantine might want 150. If you're out of hours, you've got to pay them overtime. If they got rubbish, this is a killer. When you take your rubbish off the boat, sometimes they charge up to $5 a kilo. When you've got a bigger boat, I tell you, it's a killer. But anyway, that's the process. That's what you do to get into the country and get out again. Okay, Rachel again. How long, on average, does a boat go between repainting it on such an adventure? This is both the anti-fouling paint and normally painted colours on the boat. Oh, well, my previous boat, which was a steel boat, or a few boats back, 3 boats back or something, Ice was a steel 50-foot motor sailor, and it had a very good paint job. It was built in China. That's where I met up with Jane. She was my project manager and Chinese interpreter, and I stole her after 3 years of building for warranty. Funny story. Anyway, it was a painted system, all the filler and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And we sold it after 8 years. And apparently someone said they saw it the other day, and which is like another 10 years. It's still looking as good as the day we launched it. That's the topside paint. Fiberglass fades. The boat we've got now, Beneteau, has got a blue gel coat, and blue just fades off like crazy, so it's really chalky at the moment. First job I do when I get there is hit it with polish and a polisher, machine polisher, and I'll try and get it up shiny again. But most boats are white, boring white, and so white gel coat lasts a long time if you polish it and things like that. So, and then anti-fouling, depends what you got, depends where you are and what you're doing, but usually, you can get a couple of years out of an anti-fouling job, but the anti-fouling is really expensive these days, so sometimes people go more. When we bought the boat we just bought, it had anti-foul a year before. It was very good, hadn't done a lot of work. We only sailed a bit, we pulled it out of the water. We're only going back in the water for 6 months, so we probably won't paint it again. We'll just dive on it and clean the bottom occasionally, because then it will come out of the water again for some time, and so you stretch it out a bit. So I hope that makes sense. But the anti-fouling was rocketly crazy expensive in Panama. and Antigua, like $750 US for 4 liters. So it can be super expensive. Okay, so I think. Um, um, okay, so I think that's about it. So that's pretty cool. That's half an hour of questions. So thanks for that. Oh, there's some here maybe. I better have a look, seeing there's people here. Say good day. Hi, live on YouTube. Fantastic. For your information, you can also post written comments or press releases on YouTube. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Claverton, almost impossible to capture what it's like on a yacht on the ocean without extremely expensive photographic equipment. And even then, you can't really capture it. Yeah, you're right. Amazing how everyone's using phones, iPhones these days. But I've been on the water all my life. And back in the day, when it was all transparencies or slides, just 35mm film, there was a lot of hit and miss, and you couldn't get the result until you got back to port and had it developed. And even when we started going to Antarctica in the mid 90s, digital cameras. In fact, I bought one of the cheapest. Bought one of the very first ever digital photographic cameras, and it was like a. It was like the size of a. It was like the size of a camera. It was an Apple camera, like the size of a medium-sized hard cover book, and it was about that thick, and it would take pictures of about. I think they were about 20K, and you get 8 photos from it. It cost a fortune, this camera. We took it to Antarctica and we lived there for a year, but everything else was shot on 35mm. Anyway, the long and the short I was leading to it, when we go down the ship all the time to Antarctica, all of a sudden a really amazing sort of digital uh, DSLR cameras turned up, and people were able to shoot auroras, like the lights in the sky. With these, nowadays the cameras can shoot a hell of a lot of stuff, and the light, the cameras on iPhones, their ability to photograph and film in low light is everyone knows what it's like. It's pretty good, but to get the real classic shots, you need a good digital DSLR camera with a tripod and all that sort of stuff, and you can do some amazing stuff, but it's a bit hard on a yacht. So that's true, Cleverton. At night, yeah, Jonathan, g'day. What happened to the keel fairing issue on Argo? No, there's no fairing. He picked it up off my I was talking about it on the tracker, and sent me a message. So no, there's no fairing. It's just the filler. When you've got the steel there, you put a heavy like an epoxy coat on it, which is quite thick, and then you just put the paint systems over it. So he said there's no fairing on the keel, which is cool. We try to keep it simple anyway. So Argo's fine. Drake, I'm a little late, but the mast height according to plans is, look at that, 7.9 metres. Thanks a lot, Drake. Perfect. Yeah. Did Jacob damage his windpipe on the fishing gear he cut free? I honestly, the first one where he gives his really nice rendition of going across the equator and all that stuff, Jane forgot to put in the little video about his wind pilot. She put in 2 photos but forgot the video. So she did it again. And if you haven't seen that yet, you can link to it from the press release, or the press release we just sent out a couple of days ago. If you go back to that, hit that press release, when it comes up, you'll see the Jacob video. Now, you'll probably think you've seen it before. That's a new one, right? Because Jane then put in the video clip about what he talks about when the wind pilot failed or whatever. And he doesn't really say much other than, oh, jeepers, the wind pilot's not working. I've had to pull it all apart, get it on the boat, and I'm buggered now. I'm going to go and have a sleep because it was the middle of the night, and I'll sort it out in the morning. And that's as far as it ever got. We never heard anything since then, so I can't tell you. But he, obviously, if it was a problem and he was sailing without the wind vane, we'd all know. So he must have been able to fix it reasonably easy. And the systems are pretty simple. The wind pilot's a nice piece of kit, and they're all pretty simple. So, I don't know. I have no idea what it is. To give you an idea, Abelish, Tommy, in the GGR had a wind pilot, and jeepers, they get hammered in the GGR, it's a much bigger boat, and he's kept having problems, and he kept rebuilding it and doing this, that, and the other, and so on, and he finally kept it working all the way to the finish. So they're cool. Okay, Jonathan, you mentioned yesterday the friend of Jasmine's is rowing across the Pacific. That's right. I had it written down here. Rick, he's a 580 builder. So his daughter is going across the Pacific from Peru. People may want to check out Tom Robinson's boats. Oh, young Oz, yeah, I know Tom quite well for doing that. Yeah, he never quite finished. It was a bit of a bugger. Um, for those that, yeah, Tom's an amazing guy. Really, just a gentle giant, very nice nature and everything. Anyway, our connection came through the fact that I sailed the bounty boat across the Pacific, and the bounty boat was a clinker-built, beautiful timber whale boat. Okay, and Tom wanted to build one. He just finished his apprenticeship as a shipwright. He wanted to build a whale boat to do the row across the Pacific, and he did exactly that. He built a beautiful whale boat. So we talked a little bit about whale boats, bits and pieces. We didn't row; we sailed. We had oars, but we didn't think. So we sort of hooked on in the very beginning, and I followed all his trip across, and it was fantastic. And I think what happened was if you look at modern day rowboats, they've got two big structures on each end of the boat, and so when they're upside down, those structures create the buoyancy to tip it over and pull it back upright again. Okay, and Tom's whaleboat was really cool, and it had like a bit of a cabin top at one end, the bow, and so you get in, and it was high enough to give us some riding moment. But at the end of the day, on the last leg going back to Australia, he got cooked up in a bit of a blow, and it did capsize, and I think some of his gear moved, and it meant that he couldn't actually ride it again. It ended up upside down. He lost all his clothes. There's a funny story. He's sitting on the top of the boat naked and waiting to be. He had his EPIRB and turned the EPIRB on. A cruise ship turns up with like 1,000 people or whatever it is, and there he is, naked guy sitting on the top of an upside down rowboat. And so they took him off, but he eventually got the boat back. So, but yeah, he's a great guy. Tom Robinson is a very interesting guy, nice guy. And it was a sad end, but he effectively did it. He did quite touch into Australia, but he did pretty well. So, g'day, Mike and Gay. Mike was one of my you can all go. You can bugger off if you don't want to hear these stories. But anyway, you're copping it. I'm walking home from school one day, high school, and I look over the backyard of this place on Dawes Road, I think it was, and there's this huge bloody yacht, a concrete yacht sitting there. And I'm hanging over looking at the fence thinking, sheepers, this is a bit radical. Because I'd been sort of getting into sailing and stuff, and that was a boat that Mike and Gay were building, a ferroconcrete boat, and I think I can't even remember when it got launched. It must have been launched in the mid-70s or something after 5 years of building. And there's lots of stories, I won't go into them, but effectively they sailed it twice around the world. They took off from Australia, went round to Cape Horn, ended up in England and worked in the Emirates and stuff, and went all the way around the world, came back and then went around again effectively because, why retire into a retirement home? And we've been great mates ever since. And they, from Adelaide, of course, and then Dan, Holiday Dan, that's Mike and Gabe have been helping him with navigation, taught him to navigate and all the rest of it. So quite some sailors in Adelaide, so they were watching Holiday Dan quite closely. Christine, g'day, Christine. Roughly, how much does it cost to complete the race? Big shout out for Jasmine; she's doing an amazing job. Oh, that's a complicated story because people do it different ways. All right, so some people will live on their boat when they get into port. Others will go into 3-star, 4-star, even 5-star hotels. Some people eat out once a day when they're in port and cook the rest of the time on their boat. Others will have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a restaurant, so it goes. So the values change dramatically. It's very hard, but you can put some numbers on it yourself. If you do the list, I'd have to write the numbers down. But you can assume that when they're at sea, it costs bugger all because they're living off the boat. That's easy. It's just a port time, and then are you going to live in a hotel or are you going to live in a thing? If you live on the boat, if you're in a hotel, you're working usually on close to. It depends which place. Maybe 100 euro a day in a hotel, even a simple one. When you're on the marinas in Panama, they were pretty much 50 euro a day for each day they're on the marina or on the hard. Haul outs are 300-400 euro. You've got the cost across Panama. In Antigua, we provide as the organizer. We provide. I think it was 10 days or something for the Antigua for the start of the MGR, and then the rest of it the entrants have to pay for. So it builds up, and then food you can probably count on at least €10 a day, I reckon. If you're freeze-dried meals, it'd be more, because one freeze-dried meal will cost you €10, some of them. So you can start to add it out. But I would suggest, just off the top of my head, most of the entrants are going to spend close to probably even 20 to 30,000 euro. Would it be 20 to 30,000 euro? Because they've got a lot of things to do, and it all adds up. And then if you're shipping your boat in, it adds up more. Yeah. So I'll let you work out the numbers, but it doesn't take long to start pushing up high. I think it would be fair to say that some of the entrants who built their boats and going around and shipping them in, they're going to be a couple $100,000, by the time it's all done. It can be, and that's enjoying it as well, doing the bits, flying in family and all those sorts of things. It wouldn't be, I can see that happening. And on the other end of the scale, you could do it really basic, live on your boat, don't stay in hotels, eat wet food rather than freeze-dried all the way. Wet food's a lot cheaper than freeze-dried. And don't worry about all your comms, just have your basic comms, because the sailing monthly fees, I think, are running out at about €270 a month or something for those that want to have unlimited marine coverage and stuff. So it all adds up, right? But I think, and it's a long time as well. You've got 13 months on the water, 14, 15, pretty much 18 months. So it's a year and a half of your living costs, right, to stay on the boat and keep going. So it's a big challenge, not for everyone, but those doing it, it's having a bit of fun. All right, how many questions here? Big Cheddar did an amazing job. Yep, Warren. Say second. Warren. Yep, say second video. I'm not sure about that. What that was for. Christine, off to say hi to the Blinkies this morning. Yeah, I think they're going to leave tomorrow. We warned them. We said don't leave on a Friday. So maybe they're going to go on Saturday. I hope so. We enjoy following the race from Alabama. Good on you, pal. John. Hi, John. As others would say. That's it. So don't forget to like and subscribe and share it to your friends. Tell them how good it is. All those sorts of things, and we'll see if we can push the numbers up. So it's all kind of fun. People are talking about the race, actually. Another few things happen in the last few days. Oh, that's interesting. And we'll be back on just after 6 with the tracker. So it's another. It's coming up to 10 to 5. So in about an hour and a half or something, we'll be back again with the tracker. Okay, we'll see you later. Thanks for that.
Witness history in the making. The McIntyre Mini Globe Race 2025. Small boat,